We have our lines drawn here and around here. Now if we line them up just the way they might look to be correct, and we start cutting, we would just end up with circles when we're done, little donuts, rather than have it offset and be continuous. So what we want to do is we want to take the first line and we poke our pin right in at that little tick mark, and then we're going to go to the opposite side and match it up right to the edge of the first piece. There's that little tick mark right there. We'll line up right where that pin's coming through. Then we're going to go over to the second mark and we're going to place a pin through the tick mark on the front and adjust it so that it goes through the tick mark on the back as well. So we're going through right there, and it goes through the same spot on the back. You can see that on the front the line is angling to the left, and on the back it's also angling to the left, and it kind of gets confusing, and it's easy to have those not line up. See, there we go. See, they're matched right through and right through, so that when we sew this seam, which is what we're going to do next, we'll be able to press that open and have it one continuous line. There we go. I like to check every single tick mark as I go through. Now here at the edge, we have the little tick mark here on the side. We'll poke the pin right next to it, and it should as well line up with the little tick mark on the back. And then once I know it matches up, I move it over just a pinch so it catches both layers, and I pin it. Now it's kind of awkward. It doesn't lay completely flat at this point, but that's perfectly okay. That's what it should look like. What we're going to do now is take it to the sewing machine, and along this pinned edge we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch seam all the way down. We're back from the sewing machine, and I have sewn that 1/4 inch seam, and now I think you can see that when we have it laid out, this line directly lines up with this. There's no jig at all. It just lines perfectly straight up, which is what we want, because this is going to become our cutting line. What we need to do now is we need to press this seam open. And I used a marking pin that disappears with heat, so I can't take it to the ironing board or I will lose those marks. So I'm simply just going to use a little seam roller and press this open. There we go. Now, at this point, all we need to do is take our scissors and start cutting here, and just keep going until we get to the end. There we go. We just keep cutting around and around and around until we get to the end, at which point we will just cut right through that last little bit and be done. 2 seams, starting with 1 simple square, and we get quite a bit of yardage. Let me measure this real quick and tell you approximately how many inches or how much yardage we have out of this. It's about 4 yards of binding. My square that started at 18.5 inches yielded approximately 145 inches of bias binding. If I needed more bias for my project, I could either use a larger square or cut another smaller square. Let's say about 1/2 yard of fabric. I could make another square virtually the same size as this one and use it. To finish our binding, all we need to do is fold the edges over so the long raw edges match and press. As you're pressing though, remember that this is bias and it does have a tremendous amount of stretch in it. So make sure that you're pressing it, when you're pressing it, that you keep the folded edge nice and straight. So I'll take this to the ironing board then, and I will press this in position, and it'll be all ready to apply to my quilt.